everybody, it's Zach again from new2torah.com. Today we're making another video about creation. You know, I get in my fair share of internet debates over creation versus evolution. I've taught the subject for about 7 or 8 years. Actually taught it in churches for about 2 or 3. And I really like the topic. I like the subject, and I love getting into debates. It's harder for me nowadays to get into like email debates and chat debates because really, frankly, I just don't have the time. But it comes up every so often where I get into a debate. And this last few weeks ago, I made a video about rocks. I made a video about, I think I got it right here, about rocks and the layering in the rocks. And it caused a little bit of uproar. And I even had one guy, a former coworker, challenge me to a debate. He was going to bring his uncle, who was a geologist, and we would debate. And I was more than happy. I said, absolutely, bring your uncle. Come on, let's debate. You know, after all, what are you afraid of? You have science on your side. But as we see, as time went on, and I tried to nail down the details of this debate, the geologist and this former coworker decided that they couldn't do it. The former coworker decided, say, hey, I can't debate because I don't have very good speaking skills, and basically he chickened out. And I didn't want to debate him anyway. I wanted to debate his uncle, who is supposedly a geologist. And that's what I wanted to do. Well, that didn't take place. It didn't happen. You know, whatever. Excuse. Again, I mean, what are you afraid of? If you want to debate me, here are the conditions. We're going to do it on YouTube. We're going to do it in front of an audience. And, you know, if one of us is wrong, everybody's going to see it. So, you know, here's your big chance to make a creationist look like an idiot in front of everybody. So if you want to take me up on it, let's go. I'm more than happy to do that. But this guy here, he had a geologist, you know, obviously he has a degree in geology. Bring him on, let's go. But, you know, that's the way it always is. They never show up. So anyway, but my invitation is open to everyone. But I wanted to bring up another topic concerning creation, because, you know, this is something that I like to talk about. And every so often I hear somebody bring up this whole ice core issue, where we know the Earth is at least hundreds of thousands of years old because we have ice cores, and ice cores prove that. Ice cores, you know, the rings in the ice cores show that there are many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years old, and you believe me that the Earth is only 6,000 years old, and that's what I believe. I believe the Earth is only 6,000 years old, that God created it just like He said in the Bible in 6 days. About 6,000 around, give or take, you know, around 6,000 years ago. I think we're approaching the 6,000 year mark now. So that's what I believe. But they're going to say, ice cores prove me wrong. Well, all right, and they always cite the National Ice Core Laboratory, and they bring out these details. So let's go through that. And this is something I always talked about in my creation classes. So let's go talk about this and just see how interesting this argument really is. And so the U.S. National Ice Core Laboratory, it's based in Denver, Colorado. It has a .gov web address, which tells you it's paid for by your U.S. tax dollars. Notice the .gov web address. These guys, they spend all of their time drilling and studying ice. So, okay, we pay these people your tax dollars to store, drill, and study ice. So there you go. There's your U.S. tax dollars hard at work. That's definitely a government job. That's what they do. Here's some pictures of these guys drilling for ice. They're drilling for ice. They take these huge ice cores out of the ground in different places like Antarctica and Greenland and all these different places around the United States and around the world, and they bring these back home to Denver, Colorado, where they store them in a huge facility and take them out and study them and to promote their global warming and evolutionary propaganda. So let's take a little bit more of a closer look at some of these ice cores. Here's what the ice cores look like under light. You see the dark rings and then the light rings. What they say is that these are annual rings. Now, years ago when I was teaching this, I noticed on their website that they spouted this, that they actually said that these rings were annual rings, summer, winter, but they've taken that off. I can't find that on their website anymore. The reason is because they've been called on it. They know it's fake, it's fraudulent, and they know it. And people have called them on it because the evidence is overwhelming that they're wrong. And so they don't say this anymore. But if you look out there on the web, once you publish something on the web, it's out there forever. And so if you look at the earthobservatory.nasa.gov website, they have an old article, and you can find different articles like this at places like Discover Magazine Online and a couple of other science outlets, where this propaganda was put out there a number of years ago and is still out there because they haven't taken it down, even though it's been proven wrong. So they claim these layers represent periods of time, as in seasons. Summer, winter. Basically, in a general sense, the dark rings represent summer, where the ice has sort of melted and has frozen clear, and that shows up dark in the photo. And the white rings represent snow, where it's packed down, and those represent winter. So you have summer, winter. The thickness of each annual layer tells how much snow accumulated in that location during the year, and that's a direct quote from this earthobservatory.nasa.gov website. And that article that's linked there has all of these things. It says over and over again, so there's no misunderstanding on my part, that they in fact are claiming that these rings are annual seasonal rings. Okay, so we're going to prove them wrong right here. Okay, so these people have never heard of the Lost Squadron. Actually, they have heard about it now because everybody touts it. Every time this comes up in a creation versus evolutionary debate, the creationist is quick to point out the Lost Squadron because it's such a hard-hitting argument. There's no way around it. Bob Cardin and Roy Schaffner worked to recover a P-38 that crash-landed in Greenland during World War II. The thing was, a bunch of P-38s, a fleet of P-38s and other airplanes took off to go over to the European theater during World War II, and they crash-landed in a storm on Greenland. And the whole rescue event and everything that took place was put into a book. It's just really an amazing story. So I would, if you wanted to, go check it out sometime. But a few years ago, a couple people from Kentucky decided that they wanted to go and recover these airplanes. Well, it was a little bit harder than they thought. Basically, they had to use ground-penetrating radar because they couldn't find the planes. They said, they got to be around here somewhere. We know the general area. And so they actually went out there using ground-penetrating radar, and after a number of attempts where they almost gave up, they didn't think they were going to be able to find any of them, they actually found one about 250 feet down below the ice and below the snow. They located one of the P-38s, and they decided to bring it up. And that's what they did. They went down, they melted down using this tool called the gopher, and they melted holes down, and it took them a long time to do this, and eventually workers got down there and carved out a cavern, and they took it up piece by piece, one at a time, and then brought it back to Kentucky, where they put it back together, reassembled it, and it flew a few years after that. So, here's a picture of them going down and drilling into where the P-38 was, and you notice on the photo in the recovery hole all of the different layers there. Hundreds of layers. And they were asked later, did you see all of the rings on the ice going down to get this P-38? And they said, yeah, there were many hundreds of layers. And so wait a minute, if it's true, like the National Ice Core Laboratory, paid for by your U.S. tax dollars, says is true, well, why are there many hundreds of layers? Shouldn't there be, only 48? Even if they're seasonal, it should be still around 100, right? 100 layers, one for each summer and each winter, for the 48 years, because it took about 48 years from the time these crash landed. 48 years is when the digging began. 48 years later. So shouldn't there be only about 100 layers? But they said no, there were many hundreds of layers. And some said, one report I read said too many to count. Well, they didn't even bother counting them. So why are there so many layers? If these were annual rings, why were there so many layers? And the people who were on site who responded later to this said these weren't annual rings. These weren't seasonal layers, seasonal rings. All these do is represent a fluctuation of temperature. You know, all these represent are warm, cold, warm, cold, warm, cold, not summer, winter, summer, winter, summer, winter. You see, a slight variation in temperature will produce another ring. It will affect the snow that comes down and affect the way it falls. It changes the layer, the view of the layer. And so a temperature during one thunderstorm may change 5 times. And so you'll get 5 different layers, and I'll prove it to you in just a second. Here are some layers in one snowstorm that came down and landed on a wood pile. See here, the truth is a single snowstorm can produce many layers of snow. A simple change of temperature will change the density of the snow, and thus another layer will appear. So you have one snowstorm, you may have many multiples of layers depending on the fluctuation of the temperature that occurs during that snowstorm. It's as simple as that, folks. These layers do not represent long periods of time. But you see, the National Ice Core Laboratory and some of these articles that you'll find online will say, well, the deepest core we've ever drilled has 135,000 layers. So that proves the Earth is at least 100,000 years old or more. No, that's not true, because we know for a fact that you can produce multiple layers in a single storm, much less a single season during winter. That's not true. That's a lie. That's a fraud. That's a farce. Here you go. Here's another picture. How many layers can you count in this photo? I counted just around 20. I mean, there's a shovel there in the picture for reference, for size reference on how deep this hole is here that somebody dug. I counted at least 20 when I look really close at the photo. About 20 layers. This is one huge single snowstorm up in the, I believe it was parts of North America, somewhere in North America. I forgot where it was. I forgot where I pulled this photo from off the internet. But it was a single snowstorm that was referenced here. And this, I mean, I count 20 layers in a single snowstorm? Come on, people. This is fraudulent. What the National Ice Core Laboratory is saying is fraudulent. What the people in the science arena of science that promote this stuff are saying is fraudulent. I just saw a PBS a show not too long ago. It was before we got rid of our TV, about 2 or 3 years ago. Me and my wife were sitting down, we flipped through to PBS, and they have a science show on. And it was about global warming. And they're using these, and they specifically pointed out the National Ice Core Laboratory in Denver, Colorado, talking about global warming, and they said specifically that these rings represented annual layers of time, it said, which was a lie. It's a complete lie. There's no other way to put it. You know, these people rely on federal funding. If it became widely known through this video, or maybe other videos or other people's information, that what these people were doing in the National Ice Core Laboratory in Denver, Colorado was a lie, a farce, you know, tax dollars are at stake. They may lose their funding and go out and get a real job like all of us have to do, and actually provide something and make something for a living. You know, where the private sector demands results, not just, hey, can I get another grant to go out and drill some more ice? Come on. That's not what America should be about. These people are freeloaders who've never had a real job in their life, and they need to go out and get one. Okay, let's look at the next picture. All right, this is a picture I pulled off a young lady's blog, I believe in Wisconsin. This was a single ice storm. Okay, she pulled this off the back of her car. It's 5 layers of snow and ice in one storm. 5 layers. She pulled this off of her car and took a picture of it, and I put a box around it to increase the contrast so you could see very clearly the 5 layers of snow and ice that were on her car that she peeled off and took a picture of, and she put it on her blog. So how many layers can you count in this photo? 5. How many storms? 1. Guys, what these people are doing in Denver is a fraud, and they're spending your tax dollars. You wonder why America's so broke? You wonder why we're in debt up to our eyeballs? It's because of people like the National Ice Core Laboratory that are lying and using it as a propaganda, a mounting piece to push global warming and junk science. And they're using it to promote evolution and long periods of time. When this book clearly says otherwise. This book clearly says 6 days. And if you add up the dates in this book, it's around 6,000 years. So, who are you going to believe? You're going to believe God, the creator of the universe? You're going to believe the people he inspired to write this book and document what he did? Or are you going to believe the National Ice Core Laboratory, a bunch of idiots who went to college and decided they didn't want to work for a living, so they'll live off our tax dollars in a laboratory that they built with our tax dollars to drill and study ice with our tax dollars. It's crazy. Here's another photo I got off the internet. Clearly, layers are seen in this photo. There were some dust layers that they said they had a dust storm during the winter time. I counted about a dozen layers or 2 dozen layers or something in this photo too. The fact is, this is one winter storm or one winter season. Okay, guys, the fact is, it's a lie. The National Ice Core Laboratory is a lie. So I see it time and time again. The U.S. National Ice Core Laboratory being used to promote long periods of time, lying about evolutionary time periods, and using it as a mouthpiece to spread this whole thing about global warming. It's a farce. It's a lie. It's been proven. And they've taken it off, even taken it off their website, some of this verbiage that says this, because they've been called on the carpet. Guys, we're nearing a time where our government is going to right itself. Hopefully we're going to elect somebody here soon that's going to change the way our government does business. And I hope that whoever does that goes in and cleans house with some of the spending of this money that we're spending on these worthless programs, like the U.S. National Ice Core Laboratory in Denver, Colorado. I hope we can get these guys out of business. I hope these guys can be forced to go out and get a real job and produce something in this country, like all the rest of us have to do. So anyway, if you're going to tell me that the Earth is billions of years old and millions of years old, and part of your evidence is the U.S. National Ice Core Laboratory, you're either uninformed or you're lying, because I've proven it right here. You can create layers in a single snowstorm, much less many, many, many layers in a single winter season. And the Lost Squadron, the guys who went and found that P-38 airplane in Greenland, many, many hundreds of layers in what should have only been 48, according to the U.S. National Ice Core Laboratory, or at least no more than 100. If you're going to count seasons, summer, winter, summer, winter. So this whole thing is a farce. Don't use the National Ice. Don't tell me the Earth is hundreds of thousands of years old at least, because the U.S. National Ice Core Laboratory has proved it. Because they're liars, and they should be, they should be forced to go out and get a real job like you and me. So anyway, that's it for new2torah.com. I hope I've taught you something. I hope you've learned something. Don't let people lie to you about evolutionary thinking and long periods of time. We're on a young Earth. It was created in 6 days by our Creator, and He did a magnificent job when He did it, and we screwed it up. But one day He's going to come back again. He's going to make it all right. It says that in His book. If you do not know the Creator of the universe, I suggest you come to know Him. And if you'd like that, send me an email. I'll be happy to introduce you to Him. Through the Holy Spirit, I'm sure He'll make a world of change in your life, just like He's made in mine. But it's great when you know the truth, because the truth will set you free. So anyway, I hope this has been inspiring to you. Don't let people lie to you about evolution. Go home, read your Bible. Thanks.